I am back to talk about the district on committee for the Board of Ordination within the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Denomination in Houston, Texas. I grew up in the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Denomination in Houston, Texas. And my family goes pretty far back within the United Methodist denomination. I was not always knowledgeable about that. I did quite a bit of research, and I've had time to process information that I already knew that I just never really thought about, like the fact that I had an uncle who was a district superintendent in the Missouri Conference, and he had a son who was also a United Methodist minister who is retired now and is probably in his 80s. And he was close to my mother's age. I think they shared a birthday. And my father, John Chester Dowden, was employed under the Texas Annual Conference Administration, and he was a child molester. And I am a survivor of sexual assault from my father, and my mother, Grace Dowden, also assisted him. I have many stories that are very disturbing from my childhood. And some I have shared, some I probably will not. I also married a man who was abusive, and the reason why I did was because abuse was all I had ever known. And his name was Carl Edward Anthony. I went through a very brutal divorce, and he used the legal system to abuse me. And there's actually a term for what I went through. There's multiple, really. I'm going through parental alienation, and then there's coercive control. Coercive control is when ex-spouses use the legal system to abuse their ex-spouse. Like my ex-husband is using coercive control, has used coercive control to keep me from having a relationship with our sons. And the Texas Annual Conference used coercive control in an effort to silence me and to keep me from speaking out about the fact that my father was employed under them, and he was not the only clergy who was a sexual predator. So I I was forced into supervised visitation based on false accusations by my ex-husband. It was after I began those supervised visits that I found out that the Texas Annual Conference was also involved with the supervised visitations and the Domestic Relations Office. And I was able to figure out how they were involved and how they would be capable of providing support, what type of support that they could provide the Domestic Relations Office regarding the supervised visitation. Unfortunately, the Texas Annual Conference failed to inform the visiting parents and the custodial parents that they have a history of employing clergy who are sexual predators who are capable of sexually assaulting minors. They forgot that minor detail and didn't inform the Domestic Relations Office. And of course, the Domestic Relations Office could care less. And the Texas Annual Conference doesn't really care that the Domestic Relations Office uses 2 of their churches for supervised visitation and uses those churches to exploit parents and children that are forced into the supervised visitation by their abuser, which is what happened to me. And the twist in my story is that I had to visit my kids at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church, which is under the Texas Annual Conference Administration. And the Texas Annual Conference Administration is the one that employed my father, who sexually assaulted me. So basically, the Texas Annual Conference likes to keep it in the family, obviously. That's not really my cup of tea, but, I guess they're into that, And I did have to go through sexual harassment during the supervised visitation. There were staff with St. Stephen's United Methodist Church that witnessed it, and there were staff with the Domestic Relations Office that witnessed it, and also visiting parents who also witnessed it. And there is no body, autonomy within the Texas Annual Conference. I know that for a fact. And I have experienced multiple forms of retaliation from the Texas Annual Conference. One of them, the most recent one, is that I was kicked out of the supervised visitation because I spoke out against the sexual assault that I experienced from my father and the fact that they failed to inform the Domestic Relations Office. And I was also kicked out of the supervised visitation program because I spoke out against being sexually harassed, even though the Texas Annual Conference enjoys exploiting and sexually harassing their sexual assault survivors from their clergy. So that was my motivating factor for why I decided to do videos talking about their policies and their procedures for how they select clergy that are capable of murdering their wife in a United Methodist parsonage, like Michael Tabb, whom left briefly and came back, probably because there were problems before and they allowed him to come back. And also, so I'm doing this to advocate for myself and for our sons. And I'm doing this because I want to get my story out there and tell my story. I have also been gone because of a few days because I have been struggling with my blood pressure. And I've been trying to get that under control. It's been incredibly frustrating because I've cut quite a bit out of my diet. I monitor what I eat very closely. And at times my blood sugar can still spike. And so right now, as far as the diabetes, it's not advanced enough yet to qualify for any type of medication. So I'm doing the best I can right now by watching what I eat closely to keep my blood sugar down and also to assist with my elevated blood pressure. So I'm going to continue with this, and then I have a bit more to say after I read these policies. Okay, this is the basics for DCOM, District's Committee on Ministry, and this is with the Board of Ordained Ministry and the Texas Annual Conference, the Board of Ordination within the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist denomination. And let's see. Okay, so I'm starting with the last of page 7. When the candidate is invited to enter, committee members should greet the candidate warmly, graciously acknowledge any obvious anxiety, state the purpose of the interview honestly and openly, begin with prayer. How touching. Yes, you should begin with prayer before you select clergy that are capable of murdering their wife or sexually assaulting a minor. During the interview, committee members should express interest in the candidate's present appointment, ask candidate about progress in his or her studies, ask questions which will help the committee discern whether or not the candidate is still fit for ministry. During the interview, committee members should not ask questions which might be interpreted as discriminatory and example questions which suggest a prejudice against a candidate's age, gender, ethnicity, marital status, level of education, social status, etc. If only they extended the same courtesy for sexual assault victims and domestic violence victims of their clergy. Wouldn't that be nice? But I know they're not capable of that because ethics is not a strong suit for the Texas Annual Conference administration. If any committee member asks an inappropriate question, yes, they're so knowledgeable about what is appropriate, I'm sure. Either the chair or advocate should feel free to invite the committee member to ask another question or to ask the question in a more appropriate way. At the end of the interview, the chair or another committee member should thank the candidate for his or her time, interview the candidate when to inform the candidate when to expect a decision, both written and oral, end with prayer. After the relicensing interview, after the local pastor is dismissed, debrief the interview and make a decision. You will need to make one of the following decisions. 1, local pastor is still fit for ministry and progressing in studies. In this case, the local pastor is relicensed. By the way, Richard Dowden, my uncle who was a local pastor, yeah, his younger son, Michael, sexually abused me when we were kids. But, I mean, I guess I deserved it, according to the Texas Annual Conference, probably. Okay. During the interview, the committee members should express interest in the candidate's present appointment, ask the candidate about progress in his or her studies. All right. After the relicensing interview, okay, here I am. Relicensed local pastors who have not yet completed the basic course of study will continue to serve under Episcopal appointment as part-time or full-time local pastors and work with clergy mentor. Once local pastors complete the basic course of study, a clergy mentor is no longer required. Relicensed local pastors will return to your committee annually for relicensing. Relicensed local pastors no longer serving under Episcopal appointment as part-time or full-time local pastors will be assigned a clergy mentor from their district DCOM, will notify the candidate, candidacy and recruitment assistant and clergy mentor chair of the assignment. Candidate will request and await appointment and return to your committee annually for recertification. They have all of these steps for certification. And the only thing they did for victims of sexual assault and victims from abuse by their clergy was a pathetic blanket apology that they read to annual conference to clergy, who are usually the ones who are responsible for being abusers. Local pastor is no longer fit for ministry and or is not progressing in his or her studies. Committee does not expect local pastor to become fit or resume studies in the foreseeable future. Committee does not expect local pastor to become effective in ministry in the foreseeable future. In this case, committee should confer with the district superintendent who serves as his or her direct supervisor before proceeding. If the district superintendent agrees with the committee's decision, the local pastor is discontinued. Okay. Once a decision is made, the committee should decide who will inform the local pastor of the committee's decision verbally and in writing. Inform the local pastor verbally as soon as possible within 24 hours. Inform the local pastor in writing as soon as possible within 10 days. Regardless of decisions made, the local pastor should know the committee to be a caring community of Christians. Right. When a difficult decision is made and the local pastor is not encouraged to continue, a personal contact should be planned for the days that follow. Vocational alternatives can be explored with the candidate and assistance given in locating other employment. Well, they don't do this for survivors of abuse from their clergy. I mean, they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Candidates who experience difficulties in dealing with the board's decision should be informed about any available pastoral care options. Registrar or district administrative assistant should complete the one-page DCOM action report and forward it to candidacy and recruitment assistant as soon as possible within 10 days. Before the commissioning interview, by June 1st, schedule District Committee on Ordained Ministry commissioning interviews. Interviews to recommend certified candidates to the Board of Ordained Ministry for commissioning and provisional membership should be scheduled between July 1st and September 15th, giving consideration to students and school breaks. Contact certified candidates from your district who have completed or are completing their last year theological education, along with those who self-delayed or were continued the previous year to determine how many interviews you'll need to schedule. Plan to allow at least 1 hour per interview, at least 45 minutes for the actual interview, plus a total of at least 15 minutes for DCOM discussion before and or after the interview. Divide committee if necessary so that no more than 8 members are present in any interview. By June 15th, notify DCOM and certified candidates requesting commissioning and provisional membership with interview dates and times. Give DCOM and candidates detailed information about the interview location. Tell candidates what they should expect and what they should wear. No later than 2 weeks prior to the interview, candidates should forward to you current transcripts, any changes in contact information or seminary, written responses to disciplinary questions 324.9.A through P, certified mentor's recommendation letter, any other district requirements. After the interviews are scheduled and DCOM and certified candidates are notified, collects the rest of the information you will need for the interview, personal data inventory. 2 weeks before the interviews, confirm that all candidates' information has been received. Forward candidates' information to DCOM members who will be present during that interview. Personal data inventory. Any changes in contact information or seminary. Written responses to disciplinary questions 324.9.A through P. DCOM members should prepare for interviews by prayerfully reviewing candidates' information. During the commissioning interview, extend hospitality. Create a hospitable waiting environment. Choose one committee member to stay in the waiting area for candidates serving as host. Host should welcome candidates, offer beverages and or healthy snacks, answer any questions, and make the guests feel at home. Create a hospitable interview environment with a simple altar space, chairs arranged in a circle, and no more than 8 committee members. If certified mentor is not available to accompany each candidate as his or her advocate during the interview, choose another committee member to serve as advocate. Before the candidate is invited into the interview environment, committee members should briefly discuss the information they received prior to the interview, including the personal data inventory, any changes in contact information or seminary, and the written responses to disciplinary questions 324.9.A through P, and suggest possible interview questions which will help the candidate further articulate readiness for ministry, including a maturity and depth of her or his Christian faith, a genuine sense of call to ordained ministry, physical, psychological, and emotional fitness for ministry, potential for effectiveness in ordained ministry. Confirm that the candidate's other information was received and is satisfactory, including certified mentors, recommendation letter, and current transcripts. We live right next down the road to an EMS station, fire station. When the candidate is invited to enter, committee members should greet the candidate warmly, graciously acknowledge any obvious anxiety, state the purpose of the interview honestly and openly. Begin with prayer. During the interview, committee members should Express interest in the candidate's present situation. Ask candidate to articulate his or her faith and theological understanding. Ask questions which will help the committee discern whether or not the candidate is ready for ministry. And I'll continue on page 11 next time. So I have been putting up posts about my ex-husband, and I shared about how I was warned by multiple attorneys in exposing the Texas Annual Conference and their history of employing child molesters. And one of the attorneys that I've spoke about, Harrison Fisher, who warned me, and they said that the Texas Annual Conference, if this got out to the media, the Texas Annual Conference would say that I was mentally ill, because, the Texas Annual Conference that has a history of employing clergy who are capable of sexually assaulting minors or murdering their wife in a Methodist parsonage would be experts on mental health, right? Anyway, so he said that they would tell the media that I was not well mentally, and that they would assist my ex-husband, Carl Edward Anthony, who wishes I would die and is now telling our kids that basically what Carl's words were that it would be easier if I were not around. Well, I have not seen our sons in a year because of parental alienation, because their father is keeping them from me because he wants to be able to get away with child abuse. So what he means when he says to our sons it would be easier if she were not around is because he's saying it would be easier if I were dead. That is what he is saying, because we're divorced. I have not seen my ex-husband in over a year because I haven't seen the kids in over a year, because he allowed me to have a weekend with them alone, unsupervised, because he thought that maybe that would shut me up. And I can't see our sons because I'm exposing his involvement in child abuse and child endangerment. And so now what he's doing is he's telling our sons that it would be easier for them if I were not around, meaning if I were dead. And in the past, Carl Edward Anthony has told me that he wishes I did not exist anymore, meaning he wishes that I were dead. So what Harrison Fisher didn't know, and what the Texas Annual Conference didn't know, is allegedly they were assisting a man in getting our sons away from me who wants me dead. But, the whole purpose of the Texas Annual Conference using coercive control on their victims who speak out, in other words, retaliation, is really to keep them silent. I mean, who knows what Marla Tabb would be saying about the Texas Annual Conference if she were alive, but she's not today, so she can't tell her story. Isn't that more convenient for the Texas Annual Conference? But see, here's the thing. I'm very blunt. And I like to get straight to the point. I mean, I don't want to beat around the bush. I want to tell it like it is. I just want to get straight to the point. Now, I'll tell you, Carl Edward Anthony is too much of a coward to try to take my life. He's too much of a coward. But he's more than welcome to say it to my husband on the phone and explain his position on why he wishes I were dead and why he would say that to our sons. And so, I know that part of the reason why Carl would say that is because he's hoping that in saying that that he thinks he is so powerful when he says that he's hoping he will coerce me into a major depressive episode in hopes that I will take my own life. But in his delusion, he's underestimating my strength. Because if I wasn't strong, I would not be sitting here talking about this straight-faced and calm. And the Texas Annual Conference can either assist Carl Edward Anthony. I mean, if they want to help a man that abuses children, go ahead. Like Harrison Fisher said, he said that the Texas Annual Conference would assist Carl Edward Anthony in getting our kids away from me. So if the Texas Annual Conference wants to assist a child abuser, because that wouldn't be new to them, they can do that, and they can help him get an attorney, or they can help him seek mental health treatment for his passive homicidal ideations that he likes to share with our sons who are minors. And they also have private investigators. They have enough money. They have enough money and power that they could delete my presence off the face of this earth and get away with it. But if anybody's going to tell me that they wish that I would die, I'm going to tell them, then get busy. Because I will not live in fear.